How did you get started in this industry?
Oh, great question. So the seeds of a journalist were planted a long time ago, right? I always loved to read and write and talk to people, and was really passionate about this principle of the truth and elevating the truth above all else. But I didn't actually pursue a career in journalism until I was like 27 years old. I worked at a hedge fund straight out of school. I was a middle school English teacher. I worked in policy. I'm the typical millennial in that I switch careers a lot. But I was really searching for meaning. Sometimes you're good at things, but that's not necessarily what you were born to do. And there's something that's missing. And so I was actually applying to business school when the hunch hit me. It was actually Oprah and Soledad O'Brien were speaking at my 5-year college reunion. And I was like, oh, well, the universe is clearly, telling me that this hunch that maybe I should finally pursue the journalism dream. It's time, I should go for it. And so I applied to Northwestern on a whim. I got into their graduate program for broadcast journalism, and the rest was history. Earned my degree. I did a stint in local TV news. And then my next stop was TheGrio's, and I've been there ever since. So life is amazing. It is a journey. Sometimes, you may feel like you're off the path and you're wandering, but every intentional step that you take towards being true to yourself and living in a way that is authentic to you, you will get closer to finding what it is that you were meant to do. And so that's how that happened for me.
Yeah, like you're saying, Natasha, living in your truth is important. And as you stated earlier, obviously there are a lot of things that some of us are good at, but it may not be our purpose, right? And as you said, what we were called to do. And a lot of people find themselves doing those things and just feeling unfulfilled and not knowing why. So I think it's really important that you recognize that, right? And that Soledad O'Brien and Oprah showed up at your school's 5-year anniversary and were able to help guide you on that path so that we know you now as Natasha Alford. And so as you stated, you are at TheGrio's. Can we just talk about why it's important for Black women to not just be present in the media, but to have leadership roles like you do at TheGrio's?
So there's this famous quote that is in reference to Black media in general, and it's, "For too long, others have spoken for us." Right. We obviously live in a country that has a history and a reality of racism built into every layer of society. And media was no different. Even when people were telling stories about slavery and the civil rights movement, many of the predominantly popular newsrooms were white run and white owned. And so there is power in the storyteller, telling the story of their community. And so when it comes to Black women in particular, we may be talent. We may be put out there front and center to tell stories, but I think there's even a different kind of power in being the manager, in being the leader, and making strategic decisions about what a narrative is going to be. And I think that frankly, more Black women should be in positions of leadership to shake up narratives and to just bring a perspective that maybe didn't previously exist. And I also think it's important to note the obvious diversity within the community of Black women, right? We're talking about Black women from all age groups, socioeconomic status, educational backgrounds. It's not enough for us to all be cut, in the same way or have to conform. But we really, should have all of these diverse perspectives of women at the table. So that's important. And I think for me, as I'm a millennial media executive in like the most traditional way, right? So I care very much about workplace culture and people feeling fulfilled as much as I care about the work product, because, I think that that's what a new generation wants. We want to feel fulfillment in our work, in a sense that you can be in a healthy movement, a healthy project to be working towards a larger goal, and it doesn't have to be painful, So as a leader, that's very much like my style and my emphasis, and why we make working at TheGrio's something that's about community as much as it is about, just getting stories out there.
And I think that's important. I've worked places where I was, for instance, the only Black person on air or the only Black person in the editorial meeting. And I wasn't an executive. I wasn't a main producer. I was the on-air talent. And sometimes it was hard conveying to my superiors why we needed to tell certain stories in the Black community. One, they didn't have understanding. Two, they felt like other things took priority. And so it was just so much of a push to convince and help people, my superiors, to understand why these stories need to be told in the way that, let's say, TheGrio's tells stories or Essence tells stories. So I'm happy to know that someone like you, once again, who is a millennial, is in the position that you're in, because you understand what younger people want and you also understand what older people want in the industry. And so you're able to touch both of those audiences and to help the people that you work with. Now, I want to talk about what has been your biggest challenge as a Black female journalist.
Another great question, which actually connects to what you were just saying. So, before I worked in Black media, I did do a stint in a traditional broadcast newsroom. And there was this pressure to seem overly objective, but again, from a white gaze, right? To prove that just because you were Black, didn't mean that you couldn't tell a story fairly, which is crazy because nobody asks non-Black folks to prove that they can be objective. They're just assumed to be objective. That's not my burden anymore. I feel completely free. I know that, there were so many issues with race and racism that were happening in society that I wanted to report on, that I was being told, maybe that's not a story for now, or we can, focus on that later. Just that buy-in wasn't necessarily there. And so where I'm at today, I don't have to try to prove that anymore. The flip side, though, is that in being a Black woman, there is a sense of responsibility that can be a little heavy. You feel as though every single issue, you have to be on top of it. You have to report it. You have to be the expert on it. You have to address it. The burdens are many and the responsibility is very heavy. And so I think it's really just keeping that balance and not feeling overwhelmed and not feeling as if you have to save the world every single day. But you can choose. All right, today we're going to focus on this. This is how we're going to make the world a better place, right? So not being overwhelmed by the power that we have, the insight that we have, and really choosing to, still preserve yourself in the midst of all that.
I think that's good advice, especially for someone who's just entering the industry and may feel that burden, right? That they have to cover everything. Right. And we've all been there for sure. And we have that understanding. But thanks for sharing that. Balance is everything. I want to now talk about your most memorable moment working in the industry, something that was joyous, right? Something that probably came by surprise, and something that you will never forget.
This is always hard for me. I get this question a lot. People say, what's your favorite interview? I'm like, I love them all. I mean, many of them were very difficult, draining, emotional interviews. Mm-hmm. I know I should have had a better answer prepared at this point in the day. What would I say? I think a favorite moment for me was I'll focus on a very particular moment. So I pitched a story around the time of Hidden Figures when that movie came out. And I went to find modern day Hidden Figures, and I found 3 young Black women who were working in tech at IBM. And it was so beautiful to see, again, a new generation who was stepping into this legacy of innovation and leadership and doing the quiet work, right? we only think about entertainment and fashion and sort of these certain categories that get attention, but these were young Black women who were taking the lead in, and being hidden figures in a sense, even in this like modern day and age. And then walking into the movie theater where they were doing a screening for Hidden Figures and seeing all these young Black girls who were so excited and thrilled to be there, and like cheering and screaming with applause when the movie was over. And that was beautiful for me. That's the type of story that, again, I didn't have to ask anybody for permission to do necessarily. I was able to do it and say that we need to focus on these young women. And there's power in that. And I think they felt seen, and like that matters to me as much as any celebrity interview. But I will give you a celebrity story. So meeting one of my most memorable moments was meeting Oprah Winfrey again after she gave her initial talk at my 5-year reunion, and being able to meet her as a journalist and thank her. She was incredibly kind and gracious and very down to earth, by the way. I think her favorite drink is tequila. And she offered me and 3 other Black journalists a tequila shot to start the conversation.
Okay.
And then allowed us to go around and, just pour into, how she poured into us and express, how she changed our lives. And she listened to every single one of our stories intently and looked us in the eyes. We were there for a Queen Sugar event at OWN. And she just looked at me and she said, so you answered your calling. And I felt so seen. I was like, yeah, that's it. You talked about the calling. I answered it, and life looks completely different now. And I thank you for that. So thank God, for the leaders in our community who promote these messages about going out and having courage and living the life that you really want to live. Because it does free you to pursue your dreams and to live more authentically. So yes, that is another memorable moment for me.
Both very beautiful, both very different, but both very beautiful.
Very different. Tequila with Oprah and Hidden Figures with young Black women.
I love it. All right, so one day, obviously, you're not going to be here, sadly, but what is it that you want your legacy to be? When people think of Natasha Alford, what do you want people to say?
I don't take life for granted. Honestly, it's like, especially in this day and age of pandemic, also being a chronic illness survivor, I am one of many Black women that lives with lupus. And, I understand that every day is a gift. So I do try to live out as if my legacy matters now. I think I would want the legacy to be, as a storyteller, that I really made people human, more than a talking point or a statistic, that any story I told really brought out and highlighted the humanity in my subjects, and highlighted some truth that society needed to know in the midst of so much noise. And so that's what I try to do, whether I'm on CNN or at TheGrio's. And I think as a leader, I would love for my legacy to be that I gave everyone a shot to shine and to succeed, and that people feel that even as, doors were open for me, that I try to open doors for other people. That's your greatest legacy when you're gone, is the way that you set other people up for success and to benefit in the ways that you have. And so people did it for me, and I hope that I can do the same wherever I go.
I like that, the humanizing factor when you're telling stories. We have an overload of information, right? Whether we're on Twitter, Instagram, or watching the news, there's just so much coming at us at once. And so it's hard for us to connect, right? Because the same story is happening on repeat sometimes, especially if we're watching local news and someone was shot. Say you're watching local news in Baltimore, someone was shot. It's just a different day, different street. And so you just become desensitized to what's happening. But for someone like you, who can humanize that situation, make somebody feel, make somebody relate to that victim as if it's their brother or sister or family member or loved one, it can help someone to want to make a difference, right? Or to spread that information or to spread that story. So I think that's important. It's something that gets lost when we're storytelling at times. Sometimes journalists, we can just be like, we got to get the story out. We have a deadline. We have to beat the competition. And you forget about that factor, right? You forget that there are humans on the other side who are going to be paying attention to the story, and the story is about real people. And so I think that's absolutely wonderful. Now, a fun question. If you had 3 wishes right now, what would you wish for?
Oh my goodness. Well, I was tempted to give a Miss America answer, even though I didn't know I could have fun with it. I really am just like, can we eliminate poverty? That would literally be my top wish. Let's eliminate poverty. It's, the source and root of so much of the misery that we often have to report about, and just gets in the way of us being able to enjoy life, because there are 2 worlds almost. There's 2 societies, particularly in America, where people get to live out this American dream, and they have so much opportunity, and there are people who are born into situations where they don't. And I as a former teacher, I see and feel that no child is disposable. Like, there are no people who we could just not care about and think that we're going to insulate ourselves from the effects of leaving people behind. So that is a wish for me, that we can find a way to do that. And, just politically, that the partisanship that prevents things from getting done in the government can come to an end. And that's very much a wish, because it is not looking like that's going to happen. So that's more on the serious side. Man, on the fun side, I wish I could just eat anything I wanted with no impact whatsoever on like health, appearance. I just love food so much.
Okay. What's your favorite? If you could eat anything right now, what would you eat?
Oh my God. I'm from upstate New York. I'm from Syracuse, and we're very big on like pizza and wings, it's like a football kind of college town. So I would sample like every pizza from Italy to, just across America. I love chicken, fried chicken wings, roasted chicken. I love, meats, lots of things that just aren't good for you. I have, we have roots in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. So fried pork, pastelillos, all that stuff that's, not quite as healthy for you. Right. I wish I could get away with eating that.
Okay.
And then, maybe a third wish. Again, it's more serious.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I hope that's okay. But I want every child to have at least like one person that like unconditionally supports and believes in them. I think that is also key to changing a lot of the ills that we see in society. And I just know from, again, being a teacher and feeling like there were limitations in terms of what I could do in the classroom or with so many hours in the day. And just, how it feels to see some kids grow up and to, realize their potential, and for some to not have that, especially as we talk about education right now and the pandemic and how it's going to look different when we get back to whatever the new normal is. I would love to see our education system change. And I think that would start with, again, literally providing, basic needs for children, but then also that love, and every child knowing that they can do what's in their heart. And that's what made it possible for me to do, my career is people who believed in me and poured into me. So I would want that for everybody.
All right. For a young girl listening or young Black woman listening, what word of advice would you give them? Just like Oprah and Soledad O'Brien were there for you, what word of advice would you give them to help them get on track or to find their purpose?
Well, I know that titles and pedigree can be very tempting to pursue. And you think, if I just get this one job, if I just get into this one newsroom, my journalism career will be set. But there's no substitute for mastering your craft. It does not matter how many followers you have. If you focus on being good at the actual work, so much will come to you. And so I just encourage patience and grace with yourself, right? And focus on really doing the work of the storytelling and honing your voice and figuring out who you want to be in the world. You don't need to be a carbon copy of any other journalist to make it. They're occupying that position for a reason. The world needs you. So go out and figure out the best version of you that you can be. But yes, that is key in a world where, it seems like it's like, who's leading, right? I need to be like that person. Just quietly build, and you will be surprised. Your life can change in an instant with one story or one opportunity. And you will be ready if you invest enough time in figure out who you are and who you want to be as a storyteller.
All right. Thanks so much, Natasha.